I'm John Heilemann.
And I'm Mark Halperin. With all due respect to Bernie Sanders, you'll always have a home at 5 p.m. right here.
He did the monster mash. He did the monster mash.
On the show tonight, Trump. But first, the great debate. 2 weeks from tonight, the first Republican presidential debate will take place in Cleveland, Ohio, along with the smaller minor league debate for the candidates who don't make the Fox News and Post top 10 in national poll standings. So get out your watches and synchronize to our countdown to that big debate. The second-tier debate is scheduled for 5 p.m. in 2 weeks. The big shoe will be at 9 Eastern. Some pundits who live in the land of conventional wisdom say, John, that it would be a humiliating catastrophe not to make the cut for the primetime debate. But in this case, could you make the argument, gasp, that the conventional wisdom is wrong?
You could make this argument, and I know you're going to. So at this moment, I'm going to take the opportunity to pre-butt you. Yes, there's some things. You'll say them in a minute. But look, being on primetime, much bigger audience. You'll be up there with the Donald. You'll have a chance to take him out if you were really skillful. And I think there's just a lot of people who are not, even though they're really interested in this Republican race, are not going to sit through 4 hours of Republican debate, and the thing they're going to watch is that thing in primetime.
Almost nobody will watch the whole debate, even Fox loyalists. The first debate of this election cycle is going to be that earlier debate. And the main reason, and this view is shared by the advisors to one of the candidates who's not going to make the main debate.
as it might be.
The main is, think about the people in that debate. Yeah. George Pataki, Carly Fiorina in all likelihood, Lindsey Graham, John Kasich, Bobby Jindal. These are all people who will engage in a civil, dignified, measured debate.
It will not be a freak show.
It will not have Donald Trump in it. You know that the Trump debate is going to be all about Trump. In that debate, there'll be clips, there'll be coverage, the press will be there. I think it's at least as good. There's no humiliation. This is a long contest.
Look, I totally agree with you. No humiliation. I don't think there's humiliation, and you can make some lemonade out of those lemons. But I do think, for the reasons I said, I feel like I do. But I'll also say, just expand on this one point. Everyone's focused on the fact that Trump is going to be a problem. How do we deal with Donald? How do we deal with Donald? To me, this is the moment. You've talked about it. I've talked about it. This is the moment of strength.
Here's why I don't think
the moment you can take out the Donald.
In theory. But remember, one debate has 5 people in it. The other has 10. Even though the 5-person debate's shorter, you're barely going to get to talk in the 10-person debate. I guarantee you that the people in the 5-person debate at the end are going to feel like, I got to say a lot. I got to talk. I got to make my case. Almost no one but Trump and maybe Jeb Bush is going to come out of the 10-person debate saying, I got a lot of attention. I got to say what I wanted. I don't think they're going to call on him very much because the moderators control it. We don't know how they're going to allocate the time. But you're going to get to say your piece in the 5-person debate.
No doubt about it, but audience size matters.
Yeah, size matters.
All right. Sure does. Today, the Donald the Trump, speaking of him, visited the Mexican border in Laredo, Texas, to talk about the issue he's most excited about, immigration. On his way, he covered that supremely interesting hair of his with a white hat bearing his campaign slogan and performed his best Trump, especially when he was asked if it was dangerous to travel so close to all those criminals and rapists crossing the border.
Well, they say it's a great danger, but I have to do it. I love the country. There's nothing more important than what I'm doing. And I'm the one that brought up the problem of illegal immigration. And it's a big problem. It's a huge problem. You folks know it better than anybody. And you look at the crowds outside. We have big crowds. They're all screaming in favor of Trump. Everybody wants, because they want the problem fixed.
What do you believe the problem is?
We have to have legal immigration. Legal immigration.
Mark, immigration is the horse that Donald Trump rode in on, and he's ridden pretty far on it so far. My question for you, is it time now for him to start to shift and diversify his portfolio when it comes to issues and get a little bit off this one?
I'd like to answer that question in 2 ways. First, in my normal voice, and then a high, squeaky pitch. No, in 2 ways like this. First, yes, because he's riding this with emotion and passion, and it's got him where he is to a large degree. Second, no, because I think Trump's biggest opportunity now is to diversify his message, diversify his portfolio. As he told me over the weekend, Trump must be Trump, but Trump can be Trump on a range of issues. He's becoming a one-horse pony.
Well, the problem for Trump, it seems to me, is that on a wide variety of other issues, he is not. This issue is it's very hot, right? And there's a segment of the Republican base that is very concerned about this, and he's stoking those fears. is he starts to talk about other things, it's not as clear that he is going to be as resonant with a lot of the Republican Party. His views are very heterodox.
Trade, jobs. Go to his hotel in Chicago and show people how great it is and say, I can build things. Bring in people who've worked with him. There's plenty of other things he could do that I think would inspire people. When he does this, it brings it back to an issue where it's clearly mileage, but a downside as well.
But his whole thing is emotion. Like these other issues, trade is an intellectual argument, right? You start having an argument where you say,
oh my goodness, it's not for people who oppose free trade. It's not emotional at all. Ross Perot wrote trade in an emotional way. People who say their jobs are going to Mexico and China, it's emotional. And I still think...
I'm giving up on this one because you won that point.
And I
hate to say that.
And I still think emotion around manufacturing, excellence in American business. He's got lots of other issues to talk about.
I still think this is the issue, though, for him. This is the issue. As far as he's going to go, he's going to get there on this issue. You can't let go of this issue. Let's put it that way.
He can keep it. He can keep it in. He can keep it in.
Maybe he should talk about abortion. We can find out whether he's pro-choice or pro-life.
He's smart to stay on this sometimes, but he can give it a rest and do other things. He's dominating the news cycle with this, and again, it's revving up people who've already revved. Okay. All right. Like Sandra Bullock in Gravity, the Republican field is running out of oxygen because it's getting sucked up by Mr. Trump. At least that's what they say on the television.
Let's talk about the latest fixation, if I may. I know you know where I'm going with this. Cue the eye roll again here.
I'm not rolling eyes.
Donald Trump.
Are you uncomfortable with so much of this Republican primary being about Donald Trump?
What did you make of what Donald Trump said to Lindsey Graham just moments ago?
What do you make of him in the Republican Party, in the debates, etc.?
As Republican candidates try to step out from Donald Trump's shadow.
In Trump's shadow.
In the shadow of Trump.
Threatens to overshadow John Kasich's announcement.
Mr. Trump is taking up all the air.
Trump's stealing all the oxygen in the room.
Eating up all of the oxygen.
Sucking up the oxygen.
Sucking up all of the oxygen in the room.
That's why Donald Trump sucking up this oxygen matters so much.
Why the heck, in 2 weeks of literally nothing substantive, are we still talking about Donald Trump?
Thank you for the opportunity not to talk about Donald Trump.
John, what would it take for the press to recalibrate their coverage of Trump that's based on obsession?
I would suggest an actual Sharknado might be the only thing that could get them to recalibrate. Look, the press is beating itself up, flaying itself, self-flagellating all over the place over giving Trump too much coverage. As that reflected, it's true online as well as on television. But in the end, it's good for business. Ratings are soaring, and he's irresistible to a lot of people. I think the better angel is on the shoulder, but the devil is still barking in the ear.
People say ratings are soaring. I mean, yeah, there's interest in Trump from the general public, but I think it's simply a matter of it's easy. It's easy to cover Trump.
Yes.
Every news organization.
And they're lazy.
Our show is as guilty as anyone of doing this because it's hard to ignore how big it's become, and he is the front runner in the polls.
Yes.
But every news organization should say to itself, today, can we do something else? Can we talk about something else? Can we write about something else? Because we're going to look back at this period of the media coverage, whatever happens to Trump,
and be embarrassed by it,
even if he's elected president of the United States, and say it was a dereliction of our responsibility in a 16-candidate field with a Democratic field to cover Trump the way we've been covering.
But here, my friend, is where I'm going to accuse you of doing something that you often accuse others of doing. You're speaking about the world as it should be and not the world as it is. It is true that that is probably what journalists should do. I'm talking about what would actually be required for them to actually take a step back, and they're not going to
when Trump,
until he blows up.
When Trump flirted with running, and this happened, he did the same thing even as a non-candidate, and this happened. I urged everybody to take a deep breath and think about, does he really deserve all this coverage?
Trying to build a better world again.
And now, again, he's the front runner. He can't be ignored. He's provocative. He's engaging with other candidates. But everyone has an obligation to think about every bit of their coverage.
I agree.
Is there too much Trump? Because there is.
I agree, but I'll tell you that one of the things we just talked about, they should also start to ask him some questions like things like, where do you stand on abortion? Where do you stand on drug legalization? There's a lot of contradictions in his past. They could get some mileage out of changing the subject just a little bit. Okay, coming up, Republican wise man Dan Senor gauges the degree of the Republican establishment's freak out over the Donald when we come back. Our guest tonight is Dan Senor, former Mitt Romney campaign advisor, founder of the Foreign Policy Initiative, and knower of all things interesting and consequential related to the world of Republicans. Dan?
I love that title. It's
yes.
a little long.
It's a little long. It's hard to get on a business card.
But did they Chiron that? I mean,
there's a lot of kissing up in that title.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you some questions about Donald Trump now. Okay.
Oh,
you ready? Okay.
It's unbelievable. Can't you heed his wise advice?
No, I cannot because I want you can calm everyone down here. Okay. First of all, how much is the party establishment freaking out over Donald Trump? How much? Like on a scale of 1 to 10.
I won't grade it. I'll just tell you the feeling. The feeling is he's going to dominate the first debate, which is already looking like a circus. And for all the thought that the RNC put into how to fix the problems of 2012 for 2016, debates being the primary focus, there are a whole host of problems, not the least of which is Donald dominating it, A. B, Donald as a possible third-party candidate is a nightmare. As you guys were talking about earlier, and I agree with you, Mark, the issues are bigger than immigration that he's touching. 3, there's a recognition that while Donald may sound clownish, the issues he's unearthing are not clownish. They're real issues of economic insecurity, in some cases of nativism, of protectionism. It's real stuff. He's tapping into something real. And the Republican Party's got to figure out a way to get around it and how to tap into it and organize around it, because otherwise people like Trump are going to fill the vacuum.
Beyond Hillary Clinton, who he's clearly helping, who's he helping and who's he hurting on the Republican side? I
think he's hurting Walker, Cruz, Rand, Huckabee, that crowd, because he is sucking up all the oxygen. I mean, just look at the ones who are most reluctant to take shots at him, and you can tell who he's hurting, because they know he's probably going to disappear at some point, and when he does, they want those voters. I think he's helping Jeb and Rubio.
First of all, you're not supporting any candidate. You know plenty of them. You keep calling him Donald. Or do you know him well? Or are you just
No, I'm just Trump Donald. To me, it's interesting. The Donald.
The Donald, the Trump.
Everybody in the establishment, which you're a charter member of, it says eventually he's going to disappear. Tell me the scenario, the most likely scenario where Trump disappears.
Iowa. He does badly.
He
winds up on the ballot.
He's the national leader till Iowa?
No. I'm not saying he's a major player in the elections.
Tell me the most likely scenario where he goes from national poll leader to not. What happens?
So I would simply say that I think Republican primary voters wind up in the end being pretty discerning.
In the end.
No, I'm not. In the end could be when the voting begins.
But you're saying there's a chance.
I'm going to say there's a chance. There's a chance.
National front runner through
I don't know
Iowa?
about the national front runner. There's a chance he'll be right. There's a chance he will be a major player for the next 6 to 8 months.
So it's possible he doesn't disappear until the voters vote.
Correct.
It's a long time for him to dominate.
Correct. He will have to be. There is a scenario where he actually has to be rejected by the voters.
Wow. Okay, let me ask you about money now, okay? Karl Rove, your friend, wrote a column in the Wall Street Journal today, said there's a clear top tier of 4 candidates. Cruz, Walker, Rubio, and Bush, obviously. Talk about whether you think those 4 will remain in the top tier all the way through to the end of the year, and who, if anyone, has the best chance to break into that, again, by the end of the year, who's not in that tier already.
What those 4 candidates have, among other things, is they're all going to be really competitive on the fundraising front. Because
I'm talking about fundraising here exclusively, just the tier, fundraising tier.
And what each of them has, so while Jeb has raised over $100 million in IE money, and all the others have done a fraction of that, maybe with the exception of Cruz, who's done about half of that. What they all have is major donors to their super PACs that can quickly double, triple, quadruple their donations if they feel that their candidate is in the game. Right. So those guys are, they're going to have the capacity to compete on the fundraising side. The question to me is whether or not Christie and Kasich are able to do the same. It's not clear yet. Christie's just recruited a couple of, I think, important donors, Meg Whitman among them. Kasich, obviously still very early days. He's got Les Wexner and some others from Columbus. I don't know yet if they're going to be able to assemble a team of super PAC donors the way some of these others have. But they're the ones who I think can most break in. I'm looking at this is very helpful having this up here. I don't think Rand will break into that. I don't think Perry will break into it. I don't think Carson will break into it. And to me, Carly's a little bit of a wild card.
So you think all 4 of the big 4 in money will stay there? None of them are in danger of dropping off?
Correct. And all of them, and people are going to try to argue, this one's got $20 million more, and this one's got, I don't think it's going to matter.
Let's move to Iran, because you're obviously heavily involved in talking about a way to try to stop the Congress from approving the deal. John Podhoretz in the New York Post today said, looking at polling data, and some of the rhetoric said, before I didn't think we could stop it, now I think maybe we can. Are you with him? Do you think there's a chance to do this? And if so, how does it happen?
I think it's tough, but I'm with him. And look, it's based on some of the polling he cited, like the Pew poll that shows, fewer than 3 in 5 Democrats actually support the president on the deal. But I just anecdotally, Democrats I've spoken to, either Democratic members of Congress or staffers to Democratic members of Congress, both in the Senate and the House, they are frozen. I mean, I'm amazed. The president has come out with this very intense lobbying campaign. With the exception of Durbin and Pelosi, so few Democrats are willing to commit. Let me finish. And I think when you talk to a lot of these congressional Democrats, they feel exposed. Why do they feel exposed? Because for the longest time, the president and the Secretary of State told them, don't worry, anytime, anywhere, inspections will be there. They told them all these things will be there. We'd never do a deal that didn't have these things. So many of these members, when they're back in their districts and states, have been saying for the last month and two, it has to be this, has to be this, it has to be this. And those things aren't in there, and now they're like boxed in.
We got to go to break, but I want to just ask you real quick. I heard from someone the other day involved in the fundraising efforts to put on paid television ads that the number may get above $100 million on your side. Have you heard that number?
I have not. But it could. I think it's 60 plus is the number I've been hearing.
60 plus.
Yeah, but look, if it looks like it's winnable, I think money will start coming out of the woodwork.
Dan, Senor. I'm not going to repeat that.
That was a great. Come on, knower of all things.
Knower of all things interesting in the GOP world, and fascinating and consequential. Thank you.
All right, so you got.
You updated your Chiron. It's right there. It's supposed to say consequential too. When we come back, New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu.
As the 10-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina approaches, the mayor of New Orleans, Mitch Landrieu, came by recently to chat with us about what he's seen in the city since he took office in 2010. We started by talking about the causes of the storm that has shaped the city for a decade.
First thing that everybody needs to understand now, and I think the evidence is really clear, this was a man-made disaster. It wasn't a natural disaster. Even though the storm came in and went out, we have many of those. It's when the levees broke that the city was compromised. So now, post-Katrina, we have a $14.5 billion levee system that is built to Category 3
Rock
strength.
solid?
It's as solid as a Category 3 can be.
If Katrina hit today, what would happen?
We'd be safe. Would be fine under Katrina situations. Katrina was a 5 when it came in, and went a 3, and then it was actually down to a 1. But it's because the levees broke. The levees are much stronger than they were before. Now it's a risk reduction strategy. It's not a guarantee. Bigger storms are coming our way. And by the way, New Orleans is really the nation's canary in the coal mine. We're really an example to Miami, to New York, which suffered this through Sandy, that when these big events come in our way, be they natural disasters, man-made disasters, terrorist attacks, you have to build a more resilient city. So when you build back, you have to build back stronger. The magnificent thing that the people of the city have done is they didn't build the city back the way it was. They built it the way it should have always been if we would have gotten it right the first time. And so as you see us rebuilding our schools, rebuilding our healthcare delivery systems, rebuilding our economic development, rebuilding our government, the city has successfully turned itself around, and it's moving in the right direction now, and we're doing pretty well. Although the challenge now is how to move it forward, how to become part of the 21st century knowledge-based economy and not leave anybody behind. And that's what we're working on now.
Tell us briefly the story of Circle Food and why it's such a great story.
Circle Food was a historic African-American business that provided groceries to folks in the 7th Ward, which was one of our oldest historic African-American neighborhoods. It got beat to hell by the storm, just like everything else came in. Dwayne Boudreaux, who was the owner of that, said, I'm not cashing out, I'm staying, I'm not going to borrow a bucket load of money, I'm going to wait. We put together a team of people to work with him, and through federal, state, and local work, through his work, through works of other financial institutions, we were able to help him stand back up, and he's really become an anchor of that community again. And it's a really wonderful story about what he's doing there and how well his business is doing, and he's also helping us in the 9th Ward as well.
So I want to talk a little politics, big in your state.
Sure.
A lot of legacy talk in American politics today. You got a Clinton and a Bush running. You're from a pretty famous political family.
Sure.
How many elections did your dad ever lose?
I don't know that he lost any.
Yeah, how many have you lost?
I've lost 2.
You've lost 2, and your sister just lost 1.
She just lost 1.
So what's your sense of, in our current political culture, every state's different, but nationally, is having a famous political name a good thing? Is it an advantage or is it a bad thing?
Well, it's both. It cuts both ways because you take the good and the bad. I mean, generally speaking, name recognition, goes a long way, and the more people you know, the better. At the same time, you buy the liabilities of other people that you've worked with. I mean, in families, you love and adore the people who are part of your family. You work with them, but you're separate entities as well. It is really a net positive, though, because at the end of the day, it's really the experience that matters. The public gets kind of tired sometimes, and they want something new from time to time. Right. And at the end of the day, it's not going to save you. The only thing it does is get your foot in the door. You've got to perform, and you have to perform well, and you have to earn your stripes every day.
Yeah. We got to get our viewers who have never been to your city as jazzed up as I am to always go back.
Look at that picture. I mean, it's just spectacular.
First thing, teach me how to pronounce the name of your city.
Nolans.
Nolans.
Nolans. It's just real easy, lazy.
Nolans.
Just Nolans.
How's that? Nolans.
Yeah, not New Orleans, not New Orleans, just Nolans. Just
Nolans.
let it
All right,
roll.
teach me how to pronounce the name of your state.
Louisiana.
Louisiana.
Yeah.
Louisiana.
Louisiana.
Okay.
It depends on what part of the state you're from. You can call it Louisiana, but Nolans, Louisiana.
Yeah.
Just let it rip. Let
Nolans,
it roll.
Louisiana.
Let it roll. Easy.
That's it.
That's
all
good.
right. I know you love all your children equally, but what's the last great meal? Where did you have the last great restaurant meal in your city?
Oh, in New Orleans, it doesn't matter. Any restaurant's spectacular.
Why?
You're never going to ask me. I'm never going to answer that question.
How
Are you
could
crazy?
it be? You know, Charleston's like this too. You're
Well,
a
listen,
big city, but you're not.
Figure this out about New Orleans.
How can you have such good food, so many good restaurants in one city? How does it happen?
It's not only that, but how can a city lose people and have 600 more restaurants after Katrina than they had before?
And it's not just
because we have a joy of life and a joy of food. We know how to enjoy things, even in our difficult circumstances.
Don't have a joy of life?
No, I think they have a wonderful joy of life, but it's not what they have in New Orleans.
You're not explaining it to me. It's a tiny little city. There aren't that many people.
Yeah, we know how to eat.
But why? Like, where does it come from?
You just gotta love life.
How to eat, and that drives in incredible restaurateurs.
It's really
across
beautiful.
The board. You get a great pizza there.
Let's talk about this. Yeah. How the city of New Orleans can take the joy of life and turn it into economic development and growth. In our city, the cultural economy, art, music, food, fun. It's a $5 billion industry that feeds 80,000 people.
Right?
Biggest industry.
Yeah.
And it really is about the business of entertaining people, sports entertainment. We've done more Super Bowls than anywhere else except Miami, and we should get the next one if Roger Goodell's listening. And it really is important that when you think about the business side of culture, what New Orleans really means to the rest of the world. And that's one of the reasons why the world gasped at the possibility that they would actually lose what they called the soul of the nation. New Orleans is a very important part of this country. We're very thankful, by the way, to the people of America for helping us stand up. And the K-10 anniversary, the Katrina 10, is going to be to commemorate the lives lost, right, to thank people for everything that they've done for us, and then to pivot and to look forward to our 300th anniversary, which, of course, is just going to be in 3 years because, of course, we were here before the rest of the country. Right. And we want to really be a model for the rest of America in all of the things that we're doing in terms of education, health care, economic development, and particularly resilience, how cities learn how to live through difficult times and how to stand themselves back up.
Love what you're doing with the emphasis on education, healthcare, because pre-Katrina, you were not a leader as an urban center in either of those areas.
Well, we weren't a leader in much of anything before the storm. But New Orleans now is an ascendant city. I think anybody that comes into our city, notwithstanding our barnacles and notwithstanding that we still have the same problems as everybody else, New Orleans is a city that was at worst and we're going to first. Bloomberg has recognized us that way. Forbes has recognized us that way. The Wall Street Journal. More people are moving into the city than are leaving. Our GDP is growing faster. Our sales tax is growing faster. Our jobs are growing faster. Our education system has been recalibrated. It's a pretty amazing story of not only surviving, right, not only resurrection, but actually turning yourself around and actually becoming the city that you always should have been if you would have gotten it right the first time.
Our thanks to Nolans Mayor Mitch Landrieu, and we'll be right back with Donald Trump's hat reimagined.
Today, as you saw, Donald Trump wore a hat with his campaign slogan on it. But there are better things, he said, that could go on there, so we made some new hats for him. With any luck, you'll be able to buy these soon at the Trump Tower souvenir shop.
Tomorrow, Elizabeth Drew joins us. Remember, we're on twice a day. Until tomorrow, sayonara.